Inner light. Esoteric wisdom for the soul's ascent is a contemplative space dedicated to unveiling the hidden teachings that have shaped the paths of mystics, seekers, and sages throughout the ages. At its heart lies an exploration of legends, mysteries, and profound wisdom surrounding one of the most enigmatic artifacts in spiritual history, the Ring of Solomon. Through this journey, the audience is invited to step beyond the veil of time and tradition, tracing how the legendary ring, attributed to the wise King Solomon, has inspired generations of seekers, mystics, and magicians across Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and the world's esoteric traditions. From the pages of ancient scripture to the diagrams of Kabbalah, the poetry of Sufi mystics, and the laboratories of alchemists, the Ring of Solomon stands as a symbol of wisdom, mastery, and the union of opposites. The figure of King Solomon stands at the crossroads of history and legend, embodying the archetypal wise king whose reign marked a golden age in the ancient kingdom of Israel. According to the Hebrew Bible, Solomon was the son of King David and Bathsheba, ascending the throne in the 10th century BCE. His rule is depicted as a time of unprecedented peace, prosperity, and cultural development. He is credited with building the first temple in Jerusalem, a monumental achievement that cemented his legacy as both a political and spiritual leader. Archaeological evidence for Solomon's reign remains a topic of scholarly debate, with some findings supporting the existence of a united monarchy in ancient Israel, while others suggest a more modest historical reality. Regardless of the historical details, Solomon's story quickly transcended the boundaries of fact, becoming the foundation for a vast corpus of myth, folklore, and spiritual tradition. Central to Solomon's legendary status is his reputation for wisdom. The biblical account in 1 Kings chapter 3 verse 5-14 tells of Solomon's dream at Gibeon, where God offers him any request. Solomon chooses wisdom above all else, and God grants him not only wisdom but also wealth and honor. This narrative serves as the seed from which later traditions of Solomon as a master of esoteric knowledge and magical arts would grow. The ring in ancient sources. In Jewish tradition, the story of Solomon's ring emerges gradually, evolving from subtle hints in the biblical text to explicit descriptions in later literature. The Hebrew Bible itself does not mention Solomon possessing a magical ring. Instead, it focuses on his divinely granted wisdom and his role as a judge and builder of the temple. However, as Jewish thought developed, so too did the legends surrounding Solomon. The Talmud and Midrash contain stories of Solomon's interactions with demons, particularly in the context of the temple's construction. In Gittin 68a, the Talmud relates how Solomon sought the assistance of the demon Asmodeus, to find the mystical Shamir worm, which could cut stone without the use of metal tools, thereby preserving the sanctity of the temple. While the ring is not prominent in this narrative, it is implied that Solomon possessed means, possibly a signet ring bearing the divine name, to control and bind demons. The Testament of Solomon, an early pseudepigraphal work composed between the 1st and 3rd centuries CE, is the first text to provide a detailed account of the ring's magical properties. Here, the archangel Michael gives Solomon a ring bearing the seal of God, enabling him to command demons to aid in the construction of the temple. The demons are compelled to reveal their names, powers, and weaknesses. The Testament of Solomon sets the stage for the ring's later appearances in medieval Jewish magical texts. In these works, the ring is often portrayed as a potent tool for exorcism, healing, and the acquisition of secret wisdom. The notion that the ring bears the Tetragrammaton, the ineffable four-letter name of God, connects it directly to the mystical tradition of the divine name, a cornerstone of Jewish esotericism. Islamic tradition. Solomon's status in Islamic tradition is both similar to and distinct from his portrayal in Judaism and Christianity. Known as Suleiman, he is revered as a prophet and messenger of Allah, as well as a just and wise ruler. The Quran, Surah Al-Naml 27-15-44, Surah Sad 38-30-40, describes Solomon's miraculous abilities, understanding the speech of birds, commanding the winds, and ruling over the jinn, spiritual beings created from smokeless fire. Although the Quran itself does not mention a ring, later Islamic literature hadith, tafsir, Quranic exegesis, and folklore expands on the theme of Solomon's magical authority. In these stories, the ring, often called the Seal of Solomon, Khatam Suleiman, is said to be the source of his power over the jinn and the natural world. One of the most famous Islamic tales involves the rebellious jinn Sak, who steals Solomon's ring while the king is in a state of ritual impurity. As a result, Solomon loses his throne and wanders the earth in exile, while Sak rules in his stead, impersonating the king. Eventually, through divine intervention, the ring is returned to Solomon, and his sovereignty is restored. The ring's dual composition, often described as being made of brass and iron, carries symbolic resonance in Islamic esotericism. Brass is associated with the world of spirits and subtle energies, while iron represents material strength and the ability to repel malevolent forces. The presence of the divine name or other sacred inscriptions on the ring aligns with the Islamic belief in the ineffable power of God's words. Christian and Western esoteric tradition. The legends of Solomon's ring found fertile ground in Christian and Western esoteric thought. Early Christian writers, drawing on Jewish sources, portrayed Solomon as the archetypal wise king and exorcist. The New Testament itself references the wisdom of Solomon, Matthew chapter 12 verse 42, Luke chapter 11 verse 31, though it does not mention the ring. In the apocryphal and magical literature of the Middle Ages, Solomon's ring becomes a tool for subduing demons and performing miraculous feats. The Lesser Key of Solomon, Lemegeton, Clavicula Salomonis, and other grimoires purport to reveal the secrets of Solomonic magic, including the use of seals, sigils, and ritual implements for summoning and controlling spiritual entities. The Seal of Solomon, variously depicted as a hexagram, 6-pointed star, or pentagram, 5-pointed star, emerges as a powerful symbol in Western esotericism. The hexagram, in particular, is said to represent the union of the celestial and terrestrial, the masculine and feminine, and the harmony of the elements. The pentagram, on the other hand, is often associated with the human microcosm and the mastery of spirit over matter. The ring's symbolic function in these traditions is twofold. On one level, it represents the authority of the initiate or magician, who, through knowledge and discipline, gains dominion over the spiritual world. On another level, it is a token of divine favor, a sign that the bearer has been chosen to mediate between heaven and earth. Symbolism and iconography. The physical and symbolic representations of Solomon's ring are as varied as the traditions that cherish it. In art and iconography, the ring is typically depicted as a large signet, often worn on the index or middle finger, a practice associated with authority and judgment in the ancient Near East. The most common symbols associated with the ring are the hexagram and the pentagram. The hexagram, or Seal of Solomon, consists of two interlocking triangles, one pointing upward and the other downward. This configuration has been interpreted in numerous ways, as the union of fire and water, the reconciliation of opposites, or the integration of divine and earthly realities. The pentagram, a 5-pointed star, is another symbol linked to Solomon. In medieval and Renaissance magic, the pentagram represented the 5 wounds of Christ, the 5 senses, or the 5 elements. It also served as a protective emblem, warding off evil spirits and ensuring the safety of the magician. In addition to geometric symbols, the ring is often said to bear inscriptions of sacred names, angelic sigils, or passages from holy texts. These inscriptions are believed to encode divine power, functioning as keys to unlock spiritual mysteries or command supernatural forces. Across cultures, the ring's imagery has been adapted to local traditions. In Islamic art, the Seal of Solomon appears in architectural motifs, amulets, and calligraphy. In Jewish mysticism, it adorns Kabbalistic diagrams and magical amulets. In Christian and Western occultism, it is featured in grimoires, talismans, and ceremonial regalia. The esoteric meaning of the ring. The ring, as a form, carries universal symbolic resonance. Its unbroken circle is an ancient emblem of eternity, unity, and the cyclical nature of existence. In many cultures, rings are used to signify covenants, bonds, or vows, be they matrimonial, social, or spiritual. The Ring of Solomon, therefore, is not just an object of power but a symbol of a profound metaphysical truth, the interconnectedness of all things. In esoteric thought, unity is achieved through the harmonization of opposites, the reconciliation of spirit and matter, masculine and feminine, light and shadow. The ring's circular form encapsulates this ideal, representing the whole that is greater than the sum of its parts. For Solomon, whose wisdom was legendary, the ring becomes a metaphor for the integration of knowledge and action, contemplation and governance. In Kabbalistic tradition, unity is the goal of spiritual ascent. The Sephiro, or emanations of the divine, are often depicted as a tree or lattice, but at their root is the concept of Ein Sof, limitless unity. The ring, bearing the seal or name of God, is a token of the wearer's alignment with this ultimate oneness. Similarly, in Islamic Sufism, the heart of the mystic is likened to a throne upon which God sits. The purified heart, like Solomon's ring, becomes the seat of unity, the locus where divine and human meet. The seal, names, numbers, and geometry. The seal of Solomon is a term that encompasses both physical and metaphysical dimensions. In the context of the ring, the seal refers to the inscription or symbol that grants its bearer authority over the spiritual realm. Names. The power of names is a central tenet in esoteric traditions. In Kabbalah, the divine name, Tetragrammaton, YHWH, is not merely a designation but an expression of God's essence. To possess the name is to participate in divine creativity and authority. The ring, inscribed with the name, becomes a vessel for this power. In Islamic tradition, the names of God, Al-Azma, Al-Husna, are believed to possess intrinsic power, and the invocation of these names is a means of accessing divine qualities. Solomon's ring, engraved with the name of Allah or other sacred words, is thus a conduit for spiritual mastery. 2. Numbers and geometry. The geometric patterns on the ring, the hexagram and pentagram, are rich with numerical symbolism. The hexagram's 6 points correspond to the 6 directions of space, with the center representing the 7th, the point of stillness and unity. In alchemy and hermeticism, the interlocking triangles signify the reconciliation of the elements and the ascent of the soul. The pentagram's 5 points are associated with the 5 elements, earth, air, fire, water, spirit, the microcosm of humanity, and the harmonious proportions of the human body. In Pythagorean and later Renaissance thought, the pentagram was a symbol of health, wholeness, and the mastery of nature. C. The ring as a tool of dominion. The power of Solomon's ring lies not in its material substance, but in its function as an instrument of dominion, over oneself, the natural world, and the spiritual realm. This dominion is not mere coercion, but the result of wisdom, discipline, and alignment with divine will. 1. Dominion over the self. In the esoteric traditions, true mastery begins with self-mastery. The demons and spirits that Solomon commands are often interpreted allegorically as aspects of the psyche, desires, fears, impulses, that must be recognized, named, and integrated. The ring, in this sense, is the symbol of the adept's ability to harmonize the conflicting forces within. Dominion over nature. Solomon's legendary ability to communicate with animals and command the elements reflects the ideal of the priest-king, who mediates between humanity and the cosmos. The ring, bearing the seal of divine authority, enables the wearer to act as a steward and harmonizer of the natural world. Dominion over the spirit world. In the magical and mystical traditions, the ring is the key to the invisible world of spirits, angels, and demons. The bearer, by virtue of wisdom and purity, is granted authority to command these beings, not for personal gain, but for the fulfillment of divine purposes. The Ring of Solomon in Judaism. The Hebrew Bible's account of Solomon is one of grandeur and complexity. He is depicted as both a builder and a poet, a judge and a mystic. While the text focuses on his wisdom and achievements, it also alludes to his eventual downfall, caused by pride and the influence of foreign wives. Solomon's wisdom is famously illustrated in the story of the 2 women who claim the same child, 1 Kings chapter 3 verses 16 to 28. His solution, to threaten to divide the child, reveals the true mother and cements his reputation as a discerning judge. This episode, while not explicitly magical, hints at a depth of insight that transcends ordinary human capacity. The construction of the temple is the crowning achievement of Solomon's reign. The biblical text describes the elaborate rituals, sacred vessels, and the descent of the divine presence, Shekinah, upon the completed sanctuary. The temple becomes the axis mundi, the point of contact between heaven and earth, a theme that resonates with the symbolism of the ring. Rabbinic and Kabbalistic literature. The Talmud and Midrash expand upon Solomon's legendary status, introducing elements of magic and the supernatural. In these texts, Solomon is portrayed as a master of both the visible and invisible worlds. The story of Ashmedai, the king of the demons, is particularly significant. Solomon captures Ashmedai with the help of a chain and a ring inscribed with the divine name, compelling the demon to reveal the location of the Shamir worm. This narrative illustrates several key themes in Jewish esotericism. The power of the divine name as a means of control and protection. The necessity of cunning, humility, and righteousness in dealing with spiritual forces. The integration of the demonic into the divine plan. The demons, though dangerous, are ultimately subordinated to the service of holiness. The Testament of Solomon. The Testament of Solomon is a cornerstone of Jewish magical literature, blending biblical motifs with Greco-Egyptian and Babylonian magical traditions. In this text, Solomon receives the ring from the archangel Michael and uses it to bind and interrogate a host of demons, each with its own domain and weakness. The process of naming and commanding the demons reflects the esoteric principle that knowledge is power. The ring, as the locus of this power, is both a weapon and a tool of healing. Solomon uses it not only to protect himself and his people, but also to uncover the hidden causes of illness and misfortune. The Testament of Solomon influenced later Jewish magical texts, such as the Sefer HaRazim and the Sefer HaShemish Tehillim, which contain rituals, prayers, and talismans attributed to Solomon. These works were widely circulated in medieval Europe and the Islamic world, shaping the development of both Jewish and non-Jewish magic. 3. Kabbalistic interpretations. Kabbalah, the mystical tradition of Judaism, elevates Solomon to the status of an archetype, the embodiment of Chokmah, wisdom, and the harmonious integration of the Sephirot. In the Kabbalistic tree of life, Chokmah is the second emanation, representing the primordial flash of insight that gives rise to creation. The ring, in Kabbalistic symbolism, is not merely a physical object, but a representation of the Sephirotic structure of the cosmos. The Seal of Solomon, with its interlocking triangles, is interpreted as the union of masculine and feminine, mercy and severity, the upper and lower worlds. The ring thus becomes a microcosm of the divine order, a portable temple through which the initiate can access higher realities. Kabbalistic amulets often feature the Seal of Solomon, the divine name, and verses from the Psalms. These talismans are believed to confer protection, healing, and spiritual insight. The act of wearing or using such a ring is a form of participation in the ongoing work of Tikkun, repairing and harmonizing the world. Magic and the Solomonic tradition. Solomon's reputation as a master magician is central to the Jewish magical tradition. Medieval texts such as the Sefer HaRazim, Book of Mysteries, and the Sefer HaShemish Tehillim, Book of the Magical Use of Psalms, attribute a vast array of magical practices to Solomon, including the use of rings, seals, and incantations. In these traditions, the ring is a powerful tool for exorcism. The ring, bearing the divine name and the Seal of Solomon, is used to bind and expel evil spirits from afflicted individuals or places. Healing. The ring is employed in rituals to cure illnesses, often by invoking angelic names or psalms. Divination. The ring serves as a focus for scrying, dream interpretation, or the reception of divine messages. Protection. The ring is worn as an amulet to ward off harm, misfortune, or the evil eye. These practices reflect the belief that the material world is permeated by spiritual forces, both benevolent and malevolent, and that the righteous can, through purity and knowledge, harness these forces for the greater good. The Ring of Solomon in Christianity. While the canonical Christian scriptures do not mention Solomon's ring, the figure of Solomon occupies a significant place in Christian imagination, both as a symbol of wisdom and as a model for Christ, the Son of David, in certain typological readings. The wisdom and authority of Solomon are cited by Jesus in the Gospels, Matthew chapter 12 verse 42, and the early church fathers often drew parallels between Solomon's temple and the church itself. The Testament of Solomon. The Testament of Solomon was widely read and adapted in Christian circles, serving as both a manual for exorcists and a source of moral instruction. In this text, the ring functions as a symbol of Christ's ultimate authority over demons and the powers of darkness. The act of naming, binding, and casting out demons became central to the Christian practice of exorcism, and the invocation of Solomon's authority was seen as a means of participating in the victory of good over evil. The seal in Christian mysticism. In Christian mysticism, the concept of the seal or ring takes on a spiritual dimension. The seal is seen as the mark of divine election, the sign that the soul has been claimed by Christ. The book of Revelation speaks of the seal of the living God, placed upon the foreheads of the elect, Revelation chapter 7 verses 2 to 3, and the Song of Songs, attributed to Solomon, contains the famous verse, "Set me as a seal upon your heart," Song of Songs 8 to 6. For Christian mystics, the ring or seal becomes a metaphor for the soul's union with God, the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, and the transformation of the believer into the likeness of Christ. The ring is also associated with the sacrament of marriage, symbolizing the eternal bond between Christ, the bridegroom, and the church, the bride. B. The ring in Western esotericism. 1. The Grimoires. The medieval and Renaissance period saw the proliferation of grimoires, manuals of magic that drew upon Solomonic traditions. The Lesser Key of Solomon, also known as the Lemegeton, is perhaps the most famous of these texts. It contains detailed instructions for the summoning and control of spirits, the creation of magical tools, including rings and seals, and the performance of rituals for the attainment of knowledge, power, and protection. In these grimoires, the ring is often described as a necessary instrument for the magician. It serves as a focus for intent, a mark of authority, and a protective barrier against malevolent forces. The ring is typically inscribed with sacred names, geometric patterns, or magical words. The Seal of Solomon is a magical symbol. The Seal of Solomon, whether as a hexagram or pentagram, emerges as a central symbol in Western occultism. It is used in ritual magic to invoke or banish spirits, consecrate objects, and draw down divine power. The hexagram, in particular, is seen as a symbol of the macrocosm, the universe, and the microcosm, the individual, reflecting the Hermetic maxim, as above, so below. The pentagram, meanwhile, becomes associated with the human form, the 5 elements, and the quest for spiritual perfection. In the writings of Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa, Eliphas Levi, and other occultists, the pentagram and hexagram are tools for theurgy, the practice of becoming united with the divine through ritual and meditation. Ecclesiastical attitudes. The relationship between the church and magical practices is complex. While official doctrine condemns sorcery and the invocation of spirits, the figure of Solomon as a wise king and exorcist persisted in Christian tradition. The rituals of exorcism, the use of holy water, incense, and consecrated objects, all bear traces of Solomonic influence. Folk Christianity, particularly in rural Europe, maintained a vibrant tradition of magical practices attributed to Solomon and other biblical figures. Cunning folk, healers, and wise women used Solomonic prayers, amulets, and rituals to protect against evil, cure illnesses, and bring good fortune. These practices often blended biblical motifs with local folklore, creating a syncretic form of spirituality that coexisted with official religion. The Ring of Solomon in Islam. Solomon, or Suleiman, is a central figure in the Quran, depicted as a prophet, king, and servant of Allah. His wisdom, justice, and miraculous powers are emphasized throughout the text. The Quran recounts several stories of Solomon's abilities, including his ability to understand the language of birds, command the winds, and rule over the jinn. One of the most famous stories involves the Queen of Sheba, Bilqis, who is impressed by Solomon's wisdom and submits to the worship of Allah. The Quran also describes Solomon's oversight of a vast army of humans, jinn, and animals, and his use of miraculous means to accomplish great feats. Although the Quran does not mention a ring, later Islamic tradition identifies the seal of Solomon as the source of his power. This seal is often described as a signet ring inscribed with the divine name, which grants Solomon authority over the spiritual and material worlds. Islamic esoteric and folk traditions. Islamic folklore abounds with stories of Solomon's ring and its power over the jinn. The tale of Sak, the rebellious jinn who steals the ring, is particularly popular. According to this narrative, Solomon temporarily loses his kingdom when Sak, disguised as the king, rules in his place. The story ends with the ring's miraculous recovery and Solomon's restoration, a powerful allegory for the transience of worldly power and the importance of divine support. The ring's dual composition, brass and iron, carries esoteric meanings. Brass is associated with subtle, spiritual energies, while iron is believed to repel evil spirits. The ring's inscriptions, often the names of God or Quranic verses, are thought to confer protection and authority. The belief in the efficacy of Solomon's ring persists in contemporary Muslim cultures, where amulets and talismans bearing the seal of Solomon are used for protection, healing, and success. These objects are often inscribed with Quranic verses, the names of God, or magical symbols, and are worn as rings, pendants, or carried as scrolls. Sufi interpretations. In Sufi mysticism, the story of Solomon and his ring is interpreted allegorically. The heart of the seeker is likened to the ring, the seat of divine authority and wisdom. When the heart is purified through remembrance, dhikr, love, and surrender, it becomes the throne upon which God is manifest. Solomon's dominion over the jinn is seen as a metaphor for the mastery of the lower self, nafs, and the passions. The jinn, in this reading, represent the chaotic forces within the soul, which must be subdued and harmonized through spiritual discipline. Sufi poets and philosophers, such as Rumi and Ibn Arabi, use the imagery of the ring to convey the mysteries of spiritual realization. The ring becomes a symbol of the completed human being, the Insan al-Kamil, who, like Solomon, is both king and servant, master and vessel. The seal of Solomon in Islamic art and amulets. The seal of Solomon, as a hexagram or pentagram, is a common motif in Islamic art, architecture, and talismanic culture. It appears on mosque walls, manuscripts, ceramics, and textiles, often as a symbol of protection, blessing, barakah, and cosmic harmony. Amulets bearing the seal are used for a variety of purposes: to ward off the evil eye, protect against illness, ensure success in business, or attract love. The interlocking triangles or stars are often combined with Quranic verses, angelic names, or other sacred symbols. These practices reflect a worldview in which the material and spiritual realms are intertwined, and in which sacred objects serve as mediators of divine power. The ring in other traditions. The figure of Solomon and his ring also appears in Gnostic and Hermetic literature, where he is portrayed as a master of secret knowledge, gnosis, and the possessor of divine wisdom. In these traditions, the ring is a symbol of the soul's journey toward liberation and enlightenment. Gnostic texts often emphasize the power of names, symbols, and rituals to transcend the material world and access higher realities. The ring, inscribed with secret words or symbols, becomes a key to the heavenly realms, a tool for the ascent of the soul. In Hermeticism, the ring is associated with the alchemical process of transformation. The seal of Solomon, with its interlocking triangles, represents the union of opposites, the reconciliation of spirit and matter, sun and moon, sulfur and mercury. The ring is thus a metaphor for the philosopher's stone, the perfected self who has achieved wholeness and unity. B. Alchemy and the occult. In the Western alchemical tradition, the imagery of Solomon's ring and seal is ubiquitous. The hexagram and pentagram appear in alchemical texts as symbols of the macrocosm and microcosm, the harmony of the elements, and the goal of the great work. The ring, in alchemical symbolism, is both the material object and the spiritual state. It represents the cyclical nature of the alchemical process, dissolution and coagulation, death and rebirth, separation and union. The alchemist, like Solomon, seeks to command the forces of nature and spirit, not by brute force, but by wisdom, patience, and the guidance of the divine. Influence in later esoteric movements. The fascination with Solomon and his ring persisted into the modern era, influencing secret societies, magical orders, and spiritual movements. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, founded in the late 19th century, drew heavily on Solomonic symbolism in its rituals and teachings. The ring and seal appear in the regalia of Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, and other esoteric groups, representing the ideals of wisdom, unity, and spiritual authority. In contemporary occultism, the Ring of Solomon is invoked as a symbol of the magician's quest for mastery and self-realization. Modern magical texts, spiritual workshops, and online communities continue to explore the ring's meanings and applications, blending ancient lore with new insights. The ring as a living symbol. The enduring power of the Ring of Solomon can be understood not only in historical or religious terms, but also through the lens of psychology. Carl Jung and other depth psychologists have interpreted magical objects as archetypes, symbols that express universal patterns of the human psyche. The ring, as a mandala, represents the self, the integrated, individuated personality that reconciles the conscious and unconscious, the personal and the transpersonal. The process of attaining the ring's power is akin to the journey of individuation, in which the seeker confronts and integrates the shadow, discovers the inner wisdom, and achieves wholeness. The demons and spirits over which Solomon exercises control can be seen as projections of the psyche's untamed forces, fears, desires, and traumas that must be acknowledged, understood, and transformed. The act of naming and commanding these forces mirrors the therapeutic process of bringing the unconscious into consciousness. Popular culture and contemporary spirituality. The Ring of Solomon continues to inspire writers, artists, filmmakers, and spiritual seekers. Its image appears in fantasy literature, films, video games, and comics, often as a symbol of ultimate power, wisdom, or temptation. From Tolkien's One Ring to modern reimaginings in television and film, the motif of the magical ring retains its grip on the popular imagination. In contemporary spirituality, the ring is embraced as a symbol of personal empowerment, protection, and connection to the divine. New Age practitioners, ceremonial magicians, and seekers of all backgrounds experiment with rings, seals, and amulets inspired by Solomonic tradition. These practices, while often divorced from their original religious contexts, reflect a continuing hunger for meaning, mastery, and unity in a fragmented world. Conclusion. The Ring of Solomon stands as a testament to the enduring power of myth, symbol, and spiritual aspiration. Across Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and the esoteric traditions of East and West, the ring represents the quest for wisdom, the reconciliation of opposites, and the possibility of harmony between the seen and unseen worlds. Its legend is not merely a relic of the past, but a living symbol of the human journey toward knowledge, mastery, and unity. In the final analysis, the true power of Solomon's ring lies not in its material form, but in the inner transformation it signifies. To seek the ring is to pursue the integration of heart and mind, body and spirit, self and other. It is to recognize that wisdom, authority, and mastery are gifts to be used in the service of the greater good, a lesson as relevant today as it was in the days of Solomon. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this exploration, please subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments, or revisit this story whenever you seek inspiration on your own path to wisdom.